Welcome to The Explainer. Look, today we are tearing down a really massive misconception. When you hear the word cybersecurity, you probably picture, I don't know, a solitary hacker in a dark hoodie, complex lines of green code, or maybe an IT team rushing to fix a broken server. But we're going to look at the facts and see that the definition of cybersecurity is absolutely not just an IT issue. Actually, it's a high-stakes, real-world political battleground. Every single day, the way we define this invisible digital battlefield directly impacts your daily life, your privacy, and your fundamental human rights. Seriously, ask yourself for a second, what does cybersecurity actually protect? Is the ultimate goal here to protect computer networks, state secrets, and corporate infrastructure? Or should it actually be about protecting everyday people, empowering us to safely exercise our rights? It's a huge distinction because the answer to that question completely changes how governments write laws and exactly how companies build our technology.
Now, you would probably think that such a critical global issue would have a single, unified definition. But get this. A 2014 study by the New America Foundation found over 400 different cyber-related definitions. 400! Actually, think about that for a second. There is no way that kind of massive ambiguity is just an accident, right? It allows the term to be completely politicized, molded by different actors to suit totally different agendas.
Okay, let's dive straight into this. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start by unpacking the power of definitions. Then we'll see what happens when security threatens our rights. Third, we'll ground this in technical reality. Fourth, we'll look at how we frame the cyber threat. And finally, shaping our digital future. Section 1. The power of definitions. Who actually writes the rules?
So historically, the dominant framing here has been developed by military, intelligence, and business folks. That leads global powers to often adopt a very system-focused approach. For instance, NATO views cyberspace as a fifth operational domain of warfare, prioritizing the protection of their networks. China, on the other hand, defines cybersecurity as information security, which goes beyond just system protection and includes controlling the exchange of information online. But in stark contrast to that, human rights defenders are fighting for a people-focused approach. This is a positive concept that views security as preserving rights and empowering a person's freedom to just act safely online.
The gap between those two sides brings us to this really crucial concept, securitization. Basically, it's the process where actors take everyday issues and elevate them into high-level security concerns. By framing cyberspace strictly as a den of criminals or a military battlefield, actors can easily justify extraordinary measures. We're talking emergency laws, curbs on fundamental rights, mass surveillance, and often this all gets passed without adequate public debate, just totally rubber-stamped in the name of security.
Which brings us to Section 2, when security threatens rights or when systems fail people.
Now, you might be wondering, wait, don't strict security measures keep us safe? Well, the evidence actually shows that when policies are strictly system-focused, they can create the exact opposite effect, and this brilliantly illustrates the real-world harm. Look at these international case studies. In 2007, South Korea banned anonymous speech online for security. The result? It put the data of 35 million users at immense risk when two popular sites were hacked in 2011. Then there's Russia, who proposed an international code of conduct that emphasized law and order, but it basically provided cover for intense surveillance and data localization. And in Turkey, the cybercrime unit investigated hundreds of people simply for insulting the president online. You see how that blurs the line between protecting network integrity and just policing how people use the internet? Disproportionate, securitized measures often directly weaken both your privacy and actual data security.
All right, Section 3, the technical reality and the physical infrastructure behind all this.
To truly grasp these policy debates, we have to ground them in the actual physical and digital architecture of the internet. Cyberspace might feel totally intangible, like it's just magic floating in a cloud, but information relies on physical stuff: cables, servers, routers. And one of the absolutely critical elements of this infrastructure is BGP, or the Border Gateway Protocol. Think of it like the giant postal sorting system of the internet. It enables communications between large networks. But despite its massive importance, it's highly vulnerable to manipulation, like man-in-the-middle attacks, where unencrypted traffic just gets redirected and intercepted without anyone knowing. Let's look at exactly how fragile this whole setup can be. Back in 2008, the government of Pakistan ordered a local internet service provider to block YouTube locally. So Step 2, the ISP attempts to do this by exploiting a weakness in that Border Gateway Protocol we just talked about. Step 3, this triggered a massive error. Global internet traffic everywhere that was trying to reach YouTube was suddenly redirected to the Pakistani ISP instead. The result? A total global outage of YouTube for 2 whole hours. It's wild, right? A localized censorship order accidentally triggered a massive global internet disruption. Now,
Eventually, the technical community fixed the routing issue and brought YouTube back online globally. But here's the major takeaway. Technical solutions alone are just not enough. In Pakistan, the censorship order remained long after the global technical fix. While technical measures, like BGP improvements or the end-to-end encryption used by Apple and WhatsApp, are absolutely vital, they're only half the battle. To truly protect users, robust technical standards have to be paired with rights-respecting laws.
Section 4. Framing the cyber threat. Is the internet inherently dangerous?
We really need to examine how the very concept of a threat is discussed today. Right now, cyberspace is heavily framed by military and economic perspectives as something incredibly dangerous that requires maximum scrutiny. Let's see how this plays out in reality. In 2015, the U.S. Office of Personnel Management was hacked. This exposed 22 million highly sensitive records, including mental health and substance abuse details, an absolute catastrophe. The immediate, securitized response was to seek states to blame and plan retaliation. But because the debate was so intensely focused on retaliation, it completely prevented a much-needed holistic conversation. Why were such massive amounts of sensitive data collected and stored in one centralized place to begin with?
And we see this exact same securitized mindset play out in legislation all over the world. Take Pakistan's 2015 Prevention of Electronic Crimes Bill. To fight terrorism, it basically sought to criminalize the use of encryption tools entirely. It made absolutely zero distinction between the tiny handful of criminals hiding behind anonymity and the vast majority of everyday citizens just trying to protect their privacy. But here's why this matters to you. Banning encryption fundamentally weakens overall security. Why? Because a backdoor built into a system for law enforcement is, for sure, also a backdoor that can be found and exploited by criminals.
Section 5. Shaping our digital future with a balanced approach. We've talked a lot about the problem. So what does this all mean for a solution? Well, the crucial point is summarized just perfectly by this quote from the Freedom Online Coalition back in 2015. They defined cybersecurity as the preservation of information and infrastructure so as to enhance the security of persons both online and offline. Do you notice the profound shift there? It centers powerfully on persons rather than systems. It bridges the tech, the policy, and the human rights perspectives all into one unified goal.
But to make this human-centric definition the global standard, civil society literally has to be in the room where the rules are written. These definitions are hammered out across a ton of multi-stakeholder forums. You've got technical bodies like the IETF and ICANN setting actual network protocols. You have global and regional spaces like UN groups and the African Union drafting norms. And then you have security and law forums like consultations on the NATO Talon Manual or Europol. Human rights defenders absolutely must be present at every single one of these tables to champion a balanced definition.
And you definitely don't have to be some international diplomat to make an impact here. Here's how you can actively get involved. First off, step up efforts to strengthen your own personal digital security. Simple as that. Second, push the businesses that hold your data to strictly adhere to human rights standards. Third, if you can, intervene in policy spaces to champion proportionate definitions. And finally, advocate for responsible, legal limits on the power of intelligence and law enforcement agencies.
Because honestly, if you take away absolutely nothing else from this explainer today, it should be this core thesis right here. Without considering rights, there can be no real security. Human empowerment and digital security are not opposing forces. They are deeply, inextricably intertwined. You simply cannot have one without the other.
Which leaves us with a pretty massive question to think about as you watch governments continue to roll out new digital policies. Will our future digital definitions protect the system, or will they empower you? The battle for that definition is happening right now, and the outcome is going to shape digital rights for generations to come. Thank you so much for joining me on The Explainer. Keep questioning the definitions and stay curious.